A telephone delegate out of the 92nd. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm on John's side on this. If you're doing 40 miles an hour, or if you're doing 60 miles an hour, get back over on Route 11.
Well, if you're doing 60 on I-81, I'm not going to disagree with that unless there's extenuating circumstances. This was 40.
Yeah, exactly.
This was 40. So, that, like I said, that made it for an interesting situation. Now, when I got on 81 and eventually got around the 40-mile-per-hour person and was coming down, as I got between, I think it was Falling Waters and Hedgesville, somewhere in that range of highway, there was a lightning strike. I don't know where it was. It was over on the Hedgesville side of 81. It lit up the sky like it was high noon on a sunny day without a cloud in the sky. And that lightning bolt just, the legs on that thing, that was something. Now, it was far enough away that it didn't make a sound here, but boy, I'll tell you, that was something to see.
Mike,
Beautiful and dangerous.
Yeah. Mike, I've been asked, you have survived Charleston, but has Charleston survived the Badger for the last several days?
Fair question.
The Badger has survived Charleston. Charleston has chuckled and shook the Badger off like we were nothing.
Humbling.
Yeah. Like a flea on your shoulder.
The last day is next Saturday, correct? The 12th?
Yeah, not soon enough.
Yeah. And then it's pretty much guaranteed, Mr. Hornby was saying yesterday that you guys will be called back for some sessions. I know you have interim scheduled anyway, but should I assume that he'll piggyback, he being the governor, a special session onto an interim session?
Well, I think that's the indication that he has given by saying we're going to be busy this summer. I mean, that's sort of how I believe everybody's taking that. So, yeah, I would say, yeah, that's coming.
What's the unfinished business at this point, Mike?
Well, I think it's the issues that were a priority for the governor that didn't get accomplished. I think he wants to possibly meet with the legislature and plead his case and try to convince more of us to his side on some of these issues.
What issues would those be?
Well, CON, for one, I think was a big issue for him. Vaccines was a big issue for him, and we sort of lost both of those. So I think those will be some of the issues. There's some budget concerns right now. Both budgets are out and both budgets are working. The budget is a process. So when I look at budgets, sometimes I get a little concerned, but I know it's a process and that there'll be a lot of adjustments between now and the end. And I think the governor just needs to be aware of that and work with both sides to get a budget that he's happy with, that all three of us are happy with.
Mike, the session's just about over, another week. What is, from your view, the greatest accomplishment that the legislators did this year, and what was your biggest disappointment?
As far as the greatest accomplishment, I don't know. We did a lot of heavy lifts over the past 2 or 3 years, and I'll be quite honest, this year just seemed like small potatoes a lot of the time. Neither either way. I mean, we've passed some legislation that I thought to myself, wow, this is what we're doing. We can stand up on motorcycles while we're driving now. Okay, great. But,
Did that pass, by the way?
I think it's in the Senate side, so I don't know if it's passed yet, but it passed the House.
Just whoever wants to stand up on their motorcycle, just invite them up to I-81 for a day.
Well, so I understand the legislation. Some of these motorcycle drivers are on long rides and stuff like that down the highway, and sometimes they just stand up on their foot pegs to relieve some of the stress in their legs.
That I get.
So, and they train that when you go to motorcycle training. They train you to do that. So I understand why they want to make it in law, but it was just okay. I understand we probably need to do this, but it just seemed like such a trivial thing.
So we're not talking like that scene in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid where he's on the bicycle with his feet on the seat itself, that kind of thing.
No,
right?
that was a horse, wasn't it?
No, that was a bicycle. That was
That was a bicycle, yeah, with the... We got the lady on the front there a little bit later, but yeah.
What about the
No,
disappointment, Mike?
Not standing up on the seat itself or the handlebars or anything like that.
Okay.
They're only allowed to stand on the foot pegs.
all right.
What about your biggest disappointment that should have gotten through, did not get through?
Well, I'm still working some of my bills, and of all my bills, only one of them is still alive. Well, not even my bill is alive, and that's the 1% sales tax for counties. My bill got put on House calendar, so it never really ran on the floor. They took a version of the Senate. The Senate ran a similar version. So it's what we're working on now. It is on the House floor on first reading today. There are, a ton of amendments to it. So I don't know if it survives all the amendments, so we'll see.
The safety or / amusement tax, 1% tax?
Yeah, the
Okay.
1% sales or amusement tax, the Safer Communities Act for counties.
In regards to moving municipal elections to the same day as the regular primary that will be held, Mike, any legs on that one?
Yeah, I think there are. We talked in caucus about that a little bit yesterday. I think that's moving through. That's a good possibility. I think there's a couple of people in our caucus that don't like it, and they feel like their municipalities have been doing this for, half a century without any issues, and we don't need to be putting in law something that means that they have to change that. My argument to them was that's one municipality in the whole state that I feel like some municipalities move the elections to obscure days like Saturdays and stuff like that so they can have less people show up and therefore hold on to their positions a little bit easier. So I'm in favor of this particular legislation. I think it needs to be on the either primary or the general election along with everything else. It would save those municipalities money because they could, just combine it with the other election that's already going on, and you get more people's voices making decisions.
Would this bill, if it passed, would it make it mandatory or provide it as an option?
As it is right now, I think it would make it mandatory.
Gotcha.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to go back to the 1% sales tax, the safety tax.
Sure. Yep.
The nature of the amendments, are they more guardrails on how it can be used, or are they poison pills?
No, they're poison pills.
Of what nature?
Almost all of them are poison pills. One just says it strikes everything after the enacting clause, which means it just takes everything out after the title and leaves a blank piece of paper. So that kills the bill. There's another that says you cannot enact this in any county that has a lobbyist, which came from a Berkeley County delegate for obvious reasons. But I think it's short-sighted because all 55 counties are members of the county councils associations or, West Virginia Counties Associations or whatever like that. And those associations are lobbyists as well. So that would effectively kill the bill because none of the 55 counties could participate. So there's things like that that I think essentially wipe it out. There's an amendment to take out the amusement portion of it and just make it a sales tax. There's concerns that it would have a detriment effect on tourism. I don't buy that. I think people that have $100 to spend on a lift ticket to go skiing are not going to be bothered that it is now $101.
I'm curious, does that come from an area where they have high tourism?
No. As a matter of fact, that came from another Eastern Panhandle delegate. I won't call him out, but
right. So what are the logistics of that? When an amendment is proposed, is it voted on right then, or are the various amendments stockpiled and then voted on as a...
So what happens is we have each bill has 3 readings on the floor unless we suspend rules, but almost all of them have 3 readings on 3 separate days. So today for that particular bill is the first reading. You will hear it on the floor. Everybody will see it essentially for the first time, even though we all know it's coming. And then the second day is the second reading, and the second day is when amendments are allowed to be placed on the bill. And when it comes that time, each bill will be read individually, and we will vote on each each amendment individually, and vote it up or down. If it's voted for the amendment, then it made part of the bill. And if they're voted down, then obviously the bill stays as it is. And then once all the amendments are done and we vote them up or down, that bill, as amended, moves on to third reading the next day. And that's when we vote on the actual bill with any amendments that passed.
Mike, what about the judicial positions being partisan as opposed to nonpartisan election?
Yeah, I'm sort of torn on that. I understand why people want it to be nonpartisan. Part of me says, I want to know what the judiciary, where someone stands on issues, what their philosophies are. And it's only because I feel, and this is just my feeling, that there are activist judges out there and that they do try to legislate from the bench. And, if you're going to legislate from the bench, then I want you to legislate in my direction. I wish I could say that it should be nonpartisan, and they're not going to do that. And, they're all going to take the issues on their merits and not take their personal beliefs into it and only act on what is in law. But that is just not the case. So reality tells me they should not be partisan.
Where is the bill, Mike?
That one I'm not sure. I haven't looked at that one recently.
It seems to me, Mike, I'm going to disagree with you, that in a state where everybody who wants to win an election registers as a Republican, I don't think the R gives you any further description as to what their political beliefs are now. I think when the state was more evenly divided, that may have given you an indication. But now with these ratios, everybody's registering as Republicans so they can get elected.
I don't disagree with that at all, Rob. I can look around the chamber of 100 delegates, and I can point out probably 20% that used to be registered as Democrats, and maybe even sat in the House of House of Delegates at a prior time as a delegate. So you have a great point there.
Excuse me. That came out of nowhere. I want to ask you, in regards to a quote from Roland Roberts, who is Senator Jason Barrett, finance chair in the Senate. It's his vice chair. He mentioned in an interview that there's a cloud hanging over us, referring to future potential Medicaid cuts coming from the federal government and what that would do to West Virginia. Has this been a discussion point at all in the House?
Yes. So the simple answer is yes. And we've tried to run some legislation to be proactive to that, to say that if the feds do cut, that the state will cut as well. That hasn't been well received because that means that there's 160,000 West Virginians that would lose their Medicaid coverage. But the reality is it would cost the state millions of dollars that the feds are currently putting up. Currently, it's a 90-10 split, so we're putting up 10% of these Medicaid dollars, and they're putting up the other 90%. If they were to cut that back, and we'd have to pick up like another 10% or even 20%. I just don't know where we would get the money to do that. So therefore, we would have to cut as well.
Have you had any discussions, either personally or as a group, with the federal representatives from the area, Riley Moore, Shelley Moore Capito, Jim Justice?
No, not that I know of, not at this point. I would just say that, we watch the news too. We hear what's being said out there, and we're watching the situation just to see what the feds do, and then we'll react to that.
How would
if the feds do it, I don't think it will be a turn the light switch off type thing, and then just people are just bam, right now. I'm hoping it'll be like at the end of a fiscal year or something like that they're not going to do it anymore, or not going to fund it anymore if they decide to do that, and that gives everybody time to make the adjustment.
I don't understand, as a practical matter, how a Medicaid cut manifests itself, because it's a means-tested medical plan, right? So, well,
the cut would be the federal cut would be so back before Obamacare and Medicaid expansion, there was I don't know what the exact number was, but it was closer to a 70-30 split. And then when the feds decided under, I don't know if it was Obama or Biden or whoever, the Medicaid expansion, it went to a 90-10 split, and that allowed a whole lot more people to sign up for Medicaid, or the state to offer it to a whole lot more people because we could afford it then. The feds are talking about taking that Medicaid expansion back. The cut would be, hey, we're going back to the levels that we previously gave, the state's money at. And the state of West Virginia couldn't sustain all the new people at a 70-30 split that they could put on the rolls at a 90-10 split.
And that ratio is the 90-10 would be the federal government pays 90% of the premium and the state would pay 10, or?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about PEIA, Mike? We heard a lot about that earlier, and now we've not heard anything recently. Has that been deferred to next year?
Yeah, I think it is. We have some groups that are working on that and working with PEIA to try to do a deep dive in to see what it is going to take to, make this sustainable long term. We just got to figure it out. We can't just keep plugging money at it, throwing money at it all the time. So I'm hoping that, people in the Senate and House working together will be able to come up with a solution. They're working with PEIA as well.
Mike, going back to something that you said much earlier, and I heard it from numerous other legislators, that this has been kind of a down year and no heavy lifting was done. But yet there were several important things that should have been done. PIA, the locality pay, they did try that one, but also child care. Any thinking, any reason why some of these were not approached this year, or why they deferred them conveniently for next sessions or subsequent sessions?
Well, and I don't want to say that they weren't taken care of. I think, if you can pull back the curtain and see what's going on behind the scenes, that there's a whole lot of things going on, especially with child welfare. The new Secretary of Human Services that came out of South Dakota, that was his forte up there, child welfare, and I believe he has come in and sort of taken the reins on that. I've seen in the budget that we've maneuvered money around to give more money to the area of CPS workers, more money in the adoption area. more money in a lot of different areas of child welfare to try to shore up those issues. But at the same time, you don't want to start putting legislation forward that might hamper this new secretary and the plans that he may have in place to correct a lot of these issues. You sort of want to back off a little bit and work with him and say, all right, what's your plan to tackle this? Because we did run some child welfare bills early on, and then we've sort of backed off of them because we felt with the Justice Administration we weren't getting anywhere, and we had to push legislation to make it happen. And now we feel with this new guy that maybe we don't need the legislation, that he'll come in and right the ship. And as long as we give him the money he needs to make it happen, that he'll make it happen.
On that note, we have to end the questions from Mr. Michael Hite. We appreciate your time this morning, Michael. Have a great day, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Stay dry.